Hi, I'm Ash from DroningON, and in this video we'll be reviewing the new Walkera Rodeo 150. This is a micro FPV class racing FPV quadcopter, even smaller than this thing here, the F210 3D. Everything you need to fly comes in the box: transmitter, quadcopter, battery, charger, camera. The only thing you need are a set of goggles if you wish to fly it FPV. But for £220 or approximately $250, this represents really good value if it does as it says on the box. Let's test that out now. Please remember to subscribe and enjoy the review. Very excited to unbox this, so let's go. So there it is. This is basically the little brother or the little sister of the Walkera F210. Nice packaging, feels really good quality, not cheaply made at all, which is good. Opening it up, there's a manual. No, we don't read manuals, do we? And there it is. Now it looks absolutely lovely in black and gold. I haven't seen it in this colour before. You always seem to see the Rodeo 150s in white, which clearly is not a great colour for a drone that's going to be potentially rolling over fields and crashing into trees. So it looks really, really nice in black and gold, and we'll have a closer look at that in a minute. So what else have we got in the box? We have a mini antenna extension here. That's to connect to the rear of the 150. However, it's not particularly substantial. Range testing with that will be interesting, but I'd be tempted to change that to a larger mushroom type or similar. Got to be careful, of course, not to upset the balance of this tiny little quadcopter. We have 4 spare props, which is good. We have a battery, which is a 2-cell 850 milliamp. I can't imagine that's going to give us more than about 5 minutes flight time, so we might need a few more of those. In here we have a USB cable for programming the flight controller, no doubt, and firmware upgrades. And we also have a transmitter cable here, which is probably for buddying up the transmitter, connecting to another Devo 7 and putting into trainer mode or similar. And then we have tools. So we've got a small spanner and an Allen key, probably to help undo the props and also for routine maintenance. So it's good. Underneath we have the transmitter. So we've got the Devo 7, which is the basic model, not the enhanced version. This is the same version that's bundled in with the 210. So if you watch our Walkera F210 3D review, you'll see a brief introduction to the transmitter. We probably won't go into this in this specific review. Really nice transmitter though, great quality, nice and solid, and feels really good in the hands. And in the bottom, we also have a 2 or 3 cell specific balanced charger and a transformer to power that as well. So once again, as with the F210 3D, in this box you've got absolutely everything that you need to fly this line of sight. Of course, you don't get the FPV goggles, but they're coming down in price rapidly now, with headsets and goggles available for under £150 or $200. So that's what's in the box, all really nicely packaged. Let's have a closer look at the Rodeo 150. We'll start with a size and weight comparison. So here we have the F210 3D, also made by Walkera, and here's the Rodeo 150. Clearly they're different classes of quadcopter, this being the 210, this the 150. But proportionately, the F210 is a far heavier quadcopter. I put that down to this being constructed largely of carbon fibre and metal. But certainly it's much proportionately heavier than the Rodeo 150. So a closer look at the Rodeo 150 now. So again, as with its bigger brother or bigger sister, we have the folding antennas. That's really nice because if you do crash and roll this quadcopter, these are going to fold out of place and you're hopefully not going to break them. Although, worth noting that they do not bend up and down, it's just forwards and backwards. The entire shell on the Rodeo 150 is plastic, and it's a very light plastic. I would be worried that the first crash is going to break something on this little quadcopter, mainly these little undercarriage legs. They're very, very brittle feeling, and I suspect that they'll be the first bits to break and need replacing. Although it's worth noting that they are modular, so they are easily replaced. The camera on the front is tiltable, and I noticed that the tilt on that is far greater than the F210, so you can really tilt it up to get some good forward speed. It is, however, very loose. I'm hoping that there's a way to tighten the pivot here, because I'd be worried that that might move during flight. It's very, very easy to tilt. The motors are very small, but we shouldn't mistake that with meaning not powerful. As we've seen with a lot of modern miniature quadcopters, it's not about the size, it's more about the build quality and their KV rating, and these look to be lovely little premium motors. There's no KV rating indicated on them, no printing on them actually, but we can obviously look in the manual later to see what their actual rating and size is. Looking around, so on the side we have a USB port here. That's for programming the flight controller. You can actually connect this straight into Clean Flight on Windows or Apple Mac platform and change attributes of the flight characteristics. Below that, we've got a port that says external receiver port. Not quite sure what that is for or why you would use that, but we'll read about that later. On the rear, we've got a release button for the battery panel. So rather than the battery being exposed externally, the battery is enclosed in the main body of this little quadcopter. And then finally on top, we've got a small port here covered by a little rubber cover. Under that are some micro switches. That's for choosing the video transmission channel. And behind that little hatch, we've got a connector for the antenna. As mentioned earlier though, the little extension antenna that comes with this quadcopter is probably not advisable to use because it's very, very small. I think instead I'd prefer to attach a proper mushroom antenna onto this, although of course we've got to be careful not to upset the weight and the balance of this very small quadcopter, so that might need some testing. In summary, this is a really, really compact little unit. It might be a bit of a pain to repair. If you do snap any main elements of this, it looks like you might end up taking quite a bit of it apart, but that's yet to be seen, and fingers crossed we won't be crashing it. Next thing we want to do is fly it, so let's have a look at how we charge the battery. So we'll first take the transformer and plug that into our mains outlet like that. Then plug the end of that into our charger that came with the Walkera 150. There are two connectors on the charger here. One is for 2-cell batteries, one's for 3-cell. This is a 2-cell that came with it, and so we'll plug that into the 2-cell port, and the LED now starts flashing. The benefit of a balanced charger is that rather than charging both cells at the same time and potentially unevenly, the balance port allows the charger to access both cells individually, so it means that they're always at the same voltage level and they'll have a similar life expectancy, whereas using a combined port like that to charge 2 cells can result in one cell deteriorating quicker than another. So we'll leave that flashing and let's see how long it takes to charge.
Shockingly, these tiny 850 milliamp batteries take up to 2 hours to charge using the supplied charger. For that reason, if you have your own lithium polymer charger, I'd recommend using that instead. In addition, the Walkera charger unfortunately makes no audible beep or sound when it's finished charging. The only indication is a green LED, which is a bit of a shame.
So when the battery's finished charging, the green LED lights up solidly, as you can see there, and that means we are ready to fly.
Arriving at the field now. Pretty good conditions, very light breeze, so fairly good for testing. So let's see what the Rodeo 150 can do. Connecting and binding the 150 is very similar to the Walkera F210. First thing we're going to do, of course, is install the battery. Now you do get one 850 milliamp 2-cell battery with the quadcopter. I've actually bought 2 additional Turnigy packs, which are the same specification. They're really cheap. Buy lots of them, you'll need them. Open up the battery flap. This bit's a little bit fiddly. The best way to put the battery in is with the wires at the bottom, like that, and then connect the connector like so. And same with the F210. Turn on both devices at pretty much the same time. So check that everything's at 0, which it is. Turn on the transmitter and immediately then plug in the quadcopter. Then set the quadcopter flat, and it will then beep again to let us know that it's finished its gyro stabilization or calibration. Okay, we can now turn it back over and shut the battery flap, which is a bit fiddly, as I say, getting these wires tucked in is a bit of a pain. There we go. Antenna's up, and of course we need to screw our antenna on as well. We're now ready to go. Okay, so hopefully you can see it all nice and clearly. First thing I'm going to do is just get it in the air, flight line of sight, so I won't be flying FPV at this point, and just see how it goes. So you can see on the transmitter, first thing to do is unlock the motors, so press and hold the throttle down to the left, and you can now see or you probably can't, but there's a small red LED on the Rodeo 150 to say that it's ready to go. So here we go, let's take off, and we're up. So the wind is coming towards us, so hence the quadcopter is also doing the same. So we're in stabilize mode at the moment. If I try and rotate it in any direction to the extremes, it won't tip up, and the quadcopter stabilization will stop it from rolling over completely. It's very, very quiet, considering most quadcopters of this scale are very, very loud and noisy and whiny and hummy. This is actually very, very quiet. Taking on a little fly around. Yeah, again, you know, despite actually being in flight now, it's still very, very quiet. Okay, we're going to test the punch now. Now, it's not a beautiful day today, unfortunately, so you're not going to get any beautiful blue sky shots, but here we go. Okay, I hope you can see that. It's nowhere near as quick as the F210, but then this is a tiny, tiny little quadcopter. I'm not expecting miracles from it. We'll do that again. Here we go. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's smooth. It's not exceptionally powerful, but then again, it is only a 2-cell battery. I think you could probably get a 3-cell in this. I haven't checked the spec, but if you can get a 3-cell in it, I think this would fly with much more authority and probably be a lot more fun as well. So a lovely shot of it there. It's so quiet. I can't believe how quiet this thing is. And it does look really cute in the air. It's definitely got the cute factor. I mean, flying right next to the camera now, you can hear just how quiet it is. You can also see the wind. It's quite turbulent on this little thing, but then it does weigh less than 150 grams, or maybe just under 200 with the battery. So it's going to flick around a little bit. So I'm going to turn the switch now down, so turn off stabilization, and let's see how it performs. Again, this is all line of sight test here. So stabilization is now off. Already I can feel how much more responsive it is. Very, very, very responsive. It'll also roll now as well, and I can also get it to do a forward loop. There we go. Nearly hit the ground there. Let's try that again. Whoa. Okay, now I've actually got a battery warning already. I don't know how long we've been flying, and we'll check the video to have a look at that later, but that feels about 5 minutes to me. So that's the first battery gone. Let's land and get that changed. The other thing I note, that the battery warning on this is very quiet. The F210 was really piercingly loud. This thing is actually surprisingly quiet, actually. So if you are flying it around and it's not close range, you're probably not going to hear that. So be careful not to damage your batteries by overflying this little quadcopter. The other thing I notice is that whereas the F210 always wanted to climb when on full tilt in stabilized mode, the 150 is much more linear. Having said that, of course, when you accelerate into the wind, it's generally always going to want to climb a little bit. Right, I think what we're going to do now is get the FPV headset on, and let's have a look at the DVR footage and also the camera. Right, so DVR on, got my transmitter and got my headset on, my Fat Sharks. And let's take off and see what this thing goes like. And we're up. So far so good. Now I'm only using the transmitter antenna that comes with the Rodeo 150, so I'm not using the any other type of antenna, and you know, preferably I would with this, because it only comes with a tiny little monopole antenna, which really isn't great. But then again, the purpose of the 150 is short range, I guess, so let's try this at speed. So first of all, you forget that you're flying a micro quadcopter. This thing is, you know, really actually quite pokey. Great little flyer, very, very solid. There is a fair breeze here, and despite that, it's going exactly where I point it. It's cutting through that wind with ease. I'm using a diversity receiver here. And the signal is very good as well, considering we're using that tiny little antenna that's provided with it. It's doing very, very well, I'd say. Try and take it a little bit further away. Oh, I think we actually have a battery flat beep. Let's have a listen. Yes, we do. Okay, so I'm going to have to land it and change battery, unfortunately. So in terms of battery temperature, it's barely warm, which is a good sign. Clearly we're not overstressing the battery. The climate's actually very cold here at the moment in England. I'm freezing. But the battery being just warm to touch is a good sign, because it means that we're not dramatically or excessively draining it during that flight. Okay, so new battery in, headset on. Let's go. So just a note regarding the camera, the field of view feels a little bit wider on this than on the F210, which is good. It gives me a nice immersive feel, especially with the wide field of view of this Fat Shark SE headset as well. Colours are nice, image is very smooth as well. It'd be interesting to see what this looks like on DVR later. But yeah, good camera. Just going to flick into non-stabilised mode. There we go. So we're now in unstabilised mode, and wow, that feels better. So you know, you just feel like you're in complete power of this you just feel like you're in complete control of this aircraft now. Really, really responsive and very, very natural feeling. It feels really, really good. Very nice. Really, really cool. Just feels very natural. I mean, this is the way to fly these aircraft. Oops. So unfortunately just had my first Rodeo 150 casualty. First time in stabilized mode via FPV, and unfortunately it rolled and the rear antenna has broken. Not surprising, and I think this is one of the weaknesses of this actually. The antenna mount would have been far better being on the back like the F210, its bigger brother. I think on the top there it's just too vulnerable, and it's going to always be the first thing to break whenever you have a crash. So the moral of the story is don't crash the Rodeo 150, but also a note to Walkera, this needs work, I think. So with my FPV antenna sadly broken, I'm going to have to resort to flying it in line of sight mode, until this battery's at least out. And one thing I would say, if I just flick it to intermediate mode, so this isn't stabilized mode now, it is quite tricky to fly actually. You know, I've been flying a while, but you really have to be careful. You really do need to add some expo into the controls, because otherwise it's just too twitchy. You know, you don't really feel that responsiveness so much when you're in FPV mode, because you know you're flying it, you're in the cockpit. But in LOS mode you do need to be much more careful, because you can very easily crash it. Now you can hear we've got the battery warning light and the beeps as well. You see the LED on the front flashes. So we best land it and wrap this review up. So I've unfortunately now exhausted the 3 batteries that I came to the field with to fly this Rodeo 150. It's been great fun flying it. It's an agile, nippy, responsive little 150 class quadcopter. I like the wide field of view that the camera gives, really, really nice quality. And overall, I like the just general feeling of the way that it responds when flying it in intermediate mode. The things I don't like about it, the battery cover and the struggling getting the battery cables in there before you shut the cover. The antenna mount on the top at the rear, that's asking for trouble when you crash it, and as you see here, we actually snapped and broke ours. And also, if you do hit something hard enough, one of these arms is going to snap and need replacing, which could be a bit of a pain. But for £220 or $250 for everything you need to fly, it represents good value. Do I prefer it to the 210? Well, the 210 is solid, but this has more character, more personality, especially when flying it in FPV mode. Overall, I think this represents really good value, and I've certainly enjoyed flying it today. Now it's time to go home, because it's cold.
So I hope you enjoyed the review. That's the Rodeo 150. Thanks again to buzzflyer.co.uk for giving me the opportunity to test this awesome little quadcopter. I certainly had a lot of fun. Please be sure to comment below if you own a Rodeo 150 or any other Walkera model and wish to give your feedback. Be sure to like, subscribe, and also share this video. And thank you again for watching. At the beginning of this year, Walkera, a very successful brand in the industry, released the F210 Standard Edition. This was one of the very first ready-to-fly FPV quadcopters in the market. It could literally be flown straight out of the box because it came with the transmitter and even the battery. They then introduced the F210 3D just a few months ago. This is pretty much the same model, but with enhanced flight controller and different speed controllers, which allow the motors to be reversed in direction mid-flight.